Hey guys, how's it going? So for this video, I am trying something new, as you can probably already tell. I've been wanting to share a bunch of stories that I have from my party's D&D adventures. Now, I had to wait a little bit to actually make this video because I just wanted to make sure that my friends were fine with me sharing the adventures, and they're completely cool with it. So, what I'm going to be talking about today is D&D adventures with an unlikely group. A group of individuals that I had the pleasure of playing with. Well, most of them, for the last 2 years. I'm not planning on doing too much editing with these videos, so I apologize if there's pauses here and there. It's just me thinking, basically. I need to get used to doing videos like these. But anyways, the D&D party. So, this campaign started 2 years ago. Recently, a couple months ago, it ended. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of fun. So, I figured I would start, as any good story does, in the beginning. And I'll give you some context here and there for what's going on if I feel like it's needed, but if we go in chronological order, it's probably... I mean, it will follow what the party went through, so you guys will probably discover as they would. So, anyways, how about we get to it? So this is the story of, like I said, a group of unlikely individuals. That would eventually become known as Mowgli and the Shadow Heroes. And yes, they did name themselves that. So, the adventure starts off in a port town called Stillport. It's on the continent of Samus, which is a dwarven-ruled continent, or primarily dwarven-ruled. So the adventure starts in Stillport at the Gilded Compass, which is the local adventuring guild, basically. Cassius Venticar and Pip started off at the guild counter. What I set up was that the group was meeting to basically form a party. Well, each individual was interested in joining the Gilded Compass adventuring group, and the Compass was forming the party. That was kind of the premise to get them together. And again, this is my first ever campaign, like full campaign that I ran, so some stuff was rough early on, but it was still fun. So Cassius, let me tell you about the characters a little bit. Cassius Vintikar, he's a human man. Younger, I think at the time, he was, I want to say, late teens, like 18, 19, somewhere around there. He kind of, especially in the early games, has like a regal bearing. And Pip's a tiefling bard. She, I'm trying to think of a good word to describe her. Maybe rambunctious? Just very chaotic, high energy. The player actually has a decent amount of musical talent, so throughout the session they would occasionally whip out their guitar and just start singing. And actually the player wrote up an entire song for their backstory and sent it over to me, which was amazing. I will tell you guys ahead of time that unfortunately the player that played Pip couldn't stick around too long. So they only ended up playing for a couple sessions. So it's just life stuff happens, you know. So Pip and Cassius were at the counter, and they were talking to the quest giver there. Her name was Gigi. And they were talking to her. She basically said, yeah, you two are members of the new party, and we're waiting for the rest to show up, basically. So Cassius introduced himself to Pip. Pip was like, what's your backstory? What's your deal? So Cassius informed her that he was son of a nobleman that's basically fallen on hard times, so he wants to get some coin, thus joining the adventuring group. So Pip goes and sings out, basically, Cassius is joining the Adventurers Guild. Oh, no, what was it? Oh, sorry. Cassius was a nobleman, now he's joining the Adventurers Guild. That's what it was. Some of this, I recorded our sessions. That's not something that I'll share because it's pretty personal. But I can go back and reference them whenever I want, which is really nice. So I actually re-listened to the first session because there's no way that I would be able to remember a lot of the details from 2 years ago. So anyways, Pip starts singing an amazing, original, short song. Cassius was pretty impressed with it. And it was about this time that another player showed up in the tavern. But they showed up on the other end of the building, which leads into more of the guild's bar/diner area. So she comes in, and her name's Takara, and she is a sea elf So she's an elf with like blue tinted skin. How would I describe her personality? Also kind of chaotic, not as much as Pip, but kind, caring, but often gets into trouble, whether she means to or not. So Takara enters and goes up to the bar and talks to Edward. Now Edward, a human, he's a big, burly, like Hulk of a man. Big old, bushy mustache, thick eyebrows. I don't think I described Gigi, but I'll get back to her if I remember. Anyways, Edward, she ends up talking to Edward, and basically she asks him for a drink to still her nerves, because she's nervous about joining the guild. And Edward basically tells her, I can't serve you unless you join the guild. And then Takara's like, oh, well, this is garbage, whatever. And goes to walk away. And then as Edward turns around, she notices a shot sitting behind his back. So she picks it up. I made it clear that it was obvious Edward actually left it for her. So he's actually a decent guy. He's not a jerk. So from there on, I think they had a pretty good relationship. So anyways, Takara goes over and then talks to Gigi and Cassius and Pip, and introduces herself. She doesn't get into her backstory yet. She does tell it a bit later on. But she shows up. Gigi's like, great. Gigi is probably, I would say, 24-ish. Has reddish hair, almost like a refined bearing would be a good way to say it. The party never actually really got her backstory at all, which is fine. I didn't have much of one at the time, but she's basically a former noble, so she kind of has, like Cassius, this like regal like demeanor. Anyways, Gigi, they join Gigi, and she's like, great, this is your third, we're just waiting for the fourth. So we swap over, lost and just roaming around the city, sort of nearby. I introduce Saran Greymau, and he is a decently large, not like huge, but large orc. I never got a full descriptor for Saran, but a fact that I neglected to notice early on was the player said he has a giant afro. So if you want to include that in your mental imagery, go ahead. But Saran has an intelligence score of 3. And especially early on, the player definitely plays into this. So we start with Saran lost, stumbling around Stillport, trying to figure out where the heck he's supposed to go. So, and this is also where he drops nothing major, but something that he neglected to mention to me about his character. So he's going through the city, trying to find the Gilded Compass, the Adventurers Guild. And he's sort of lost. He can't read. So he can't make out any of the signs. He doesn't know where he's going. I introduce him and I'm like, you're pretty sure it's in this area, but you're a little lost. And you think it's about the right time? Or maybe that was yesterday. So he's stumbling around looking. He ends up running into an NPC called Random Wolt, which he will come up later. Another human in Staleport. I used a lot of humans because I kind of separated areas, not fully by race, but like I'd have like a dominant race in the area for the starting things. So he meets Random Wolt. He's an older adventurer, probably I would say probably pushing late 50s. He has like a shock of white hair, but he's like pretty buff. I think I set him as a monk for his class. Back when I statted up every NPC as players. I don't do that anymore. But anyways, Random shows up and he's very loud, just like Sansarand is. So they start talking at each other. This is back when we were playing a good amount of Overwatch. So one of my players comments, "Is this two Torbjorns talking to each other?" So if you've played Overwatch, you can have an idea of how they sounded. So Random ends up talking to San, and San explains that he's lost. He's trying to find the building, but he can't remember what it's called or where it is. He only remembers that, well, he wants to make coin, and there's some place that he was supposed to make coin. So eventually Random puts it together and brings him over to the Gilded Compass, where he joins the rest of the party. So at this point, Gigi is having everybody sign contracts for the guild. So the rest of the party by this point has signed it. Sansaran walks in and then walks through the quest area that's on the left of the building into the dining area, sits at a table, and picks up a bowl of poker chips and starts eating them. I describe them as very crunchy. And Gigi tries to pull his attention as he walks by, but he's oblivious, so she basically explains that that's their fourth, and everybody else has signed the contract by now, basically saying that the Gilded Compass gets a portion of the profits, which is already taken out in advance, and they provide services as of like beds you can stay in for the night, discounted food, and of course providing way between for the request. They also have like a dimensional storage thing that can be used, but they never really made use of that because they have like a chest that's linked between the guilds. But anyways, so they end up going over to the table where San is sitting. And Gigi brings over the contract. And this is where him not being able to read is played up. Because she puts down the contract. And the player describes San as immediately sweating as they stare at this paper. And they're clearly getting, like, worked up. And Takara is like, oh, hey, buddy, do you need help? Don't worry about it. You know, I can tell you what it says and everything. And Gigi is basically like, yeah, we just need you to sign your name and or just sign the piece of paper at all. So eventually, San is, well, Gigi, he agrees to join, but Gigi needs a signature. So she just kind of grabs his hand and marks a little X with it. And then at this point, San is ecstatic because he just wrote his first word and it was his name. This amazing little X mark is wonderful. So, yeah. At that point, the party's together. They go and talk to Gigi to pick a quest. And they, I had 2 quests made up at the time, and a third one, which I called an emergency quest, or high priority, something along those lines. And basically it just came in, and the party asked about it, and they ended up accepting it. And basically the quest was that a group of bullywugs had moved into a little marsh nearby, and they were keeping the fishermen from being able to make their livelihood by being in the area and being like a nuisance to them and just like causing general havoc. So the team was tasked with either exterminating them or just getting them to move to another area. So they accepted the quest and headed out a couple hours outside the town to the marsh. And on that way, actually Cassius asked Gigi what a bullywug was because he didn't know. And she explained that a bullywug was about a 2.5 foot, 3 foot humanoid frog person with like low kind of bestial intelligence outside of that they can kind of make rough shelter and crude spears. The party asked if I say the party, but Pip asked if there was anything valuable that could be salvaged from them. And she responded, not a lot, but there is a market for frog legs, so there's that. Cassius remarks that he thinks he had them years ago at a party, and he didn't quite like them. So the group sets out and heads out to the marsh. It's about 2 hours outside the city. And they, some of them start telling their backstory to the other party because Pip keeps asking, oh, what's your story? Sorry about that. I had some background noise, so I had to pause the recording. So Takara starts telling the group about her backstory, and that she basically grew up on the sea. She was actually born out on a ship during a great storm, and during her birth, the ship was actually capsized by a giant lightning bolt, and most of the crew, including her parents, were lost at sea, but she was found washed upon shore by the ship's captain, who survived, and his name was Victor Wren, or Richterin? Richterin. And he's a dwarf, and he basically took her in and raised her. And like I said, she basically grew up on the sea. She ended up meeting another tiefling named Toulouse. Later on, like in her teens, she's probably early 20s by this point. And Toulouse was having a hard time in the city, so he basically hopped on a rowboat and headed out into the ocean to find new land, somewhere for him to belong, and ended up being picked up half-starved by Takara and her crew. But since then, they've parted ways, and Takara mainly grew up doing like shipments and stuff with her father, and they had a homestead on Giant Weasel Island, which is a small island that's off the coast of Samus, like kind of a little kitty-cornered from Stillport. So, she explains that Pip sings an original song for Takara. It went along like Takara, she grew up on the sea, and then she joined the Adventurers Guild. So, one of a kind, amazing masterpiece. Cassius said it was just as good as the first time. And then San shared his story. And that's just basically that he left his home tribe village thing and wanted to find a place of for himself after his sister actually took over the tribe from his father, who held a competition to decide which of the kids would get it. But she used kind of, instead of brawn, cunning, and basically got him drunk before the competition, so he never showed up to it. So by default, she won. So he's like, well, I'm just gonna leave and find a place of my own. So he found a plot of land that he liked being sold by a halfling named Carlton Bubbly. And it's kind of an idyllic little plot of land. It was by a lake, had plenty of forest for wood. It was near a mountain. Nice little grassy patch of land. So he explains that he's looking for coin to buy this plot of land, which will cost him 50,000 gold. So the party continues on. They find the Bullywug camp, and Sorry, allergies. Find the Bullywug camp, and they stand back and try and devise a plan. I was playing Breath of the Wild at the time, so I described a Bullywug up on like a rickety scaffolding, just as a lookout in like the center of the camp, and it's all like ramshackle little like tents and lean-tos just made of like animal hide and sticks. Most of the Bullywugs have just like crudely made spears or just kind of like rusty knives and stuff that they stole. So the party tries to devise a plan. Eventually, Pip just kind of gets bored and wanders out. And, just basically it says hi to the Bullywug, like the nearest Bullywug, and it spots her, and just kind of like plops its staff, or spear, on the ground and kind of just points and like kind of tries to threaten her away. So Cassius and Takara hang back a little bit. San ends up like wandering up, and the Pip, the player suggests that maybe he can charm them with music. So Pip, she takes out, what was it? Their lute, I think is their lute, and does a performance roll, and doesn't do like amazing with it. So I said that the music doesn't really translate well for Bullywugs. They don't really get it. So he's like, okay. So Pip, she takes out a set of bagpipes. I'm like, alright, you can do another performance roll. And he does. This one was like a 15 or something, so it's pretty good. And she starts playing the bagpipes, and I'm like, now this the Bullywugs get. They're really into the bagpipes. The music spreads through the little encampment, and they start to come out, and they start to like dance and tap along to it. And then the player who plays Pip is like, oh, can I like lead them out into the forest? Because I described like a forest, just like it's like a little marshy area that leads into the forest next to the water. So I'm like, yeah, sure, you can conga line the Bullywugs out. So the Bullywugs actually form up a conga line and follow behind Pip. And of course, in the back of the conga line, San joins in. So San walks up to the last Bullywug and starts congaing with the rest of them. I described the Bullywug as like noticing him coming up and then like being freaked out, but then noticing that he's sitting there dancing. So then he's like, oh, okay, and joins in. So Pip leads them out into the forest. Cassius and Takara stay back and start destroying the houses that they had set up, the tents. Takara uses crate water, actually I think it's shape water, to douse the little campfire that they had. Cassius used Eldritch Blast. He's a I forgot to tell you guys their classes. Cassius is a warlock. He went Fae. Takara is a sorcerer. She went where'd she go? The Tempest? Lightning? Whatever the lightning based one was. She's ocean themed, so Sansaran is barbarian, and Pip is a bard. So Cassius Eldritch Blast and destroys a bunch of these structures with beams of force, while the other half of the team heads into the forest. So they head into the forest, and the Conga line continues. And I say that Pip leads them through the forest for probably about 15 minutes or so. And now I'm like, you're starting to struggle a little bit. Like, you're losing air. Bagpipes are kind of hard to maintain. So I had her roll a con save, and it wasn't amazing. So I'm like, you're starting to struggle a bit. You managed to keep it up for like another 5 minutes, but it's getting tougher and tougher. So this is when I introduced the 5th character. Now, this player is completely new to RPGs. This entire group was new to D&D at the time. Like, this was our first game ever, but this specific player was new to role-playing games as a whole, TTRPGs. So she didn't know if she'd actually like it or not. So her character was designed to be able to like be dropped in whenever she's felt like playing and was around. So her character is a wood elf, I believe, ranger, named Irotha. She later on, as terms of like personality, becomes the mom of the group. A very kind, caring, looking after the team. So she hears bagpipes off in the distance, and as you do, you're like, what the heck, bagpipes? So she goes over and checks out and sees a conga line of bullywugs. So Pip starts to falter in her playing. So Irotha actually has a flute. So she takes out the flute and begins playing to take up the slack of Pip. So they end up alternating between each other's music. I have her make another performance roll, and she does pretty good with it. I want to say like a 14 or something. So the Bullywugs move their conga line over to behind Irotha. And at this point, Irotha saw San, and they actually have history together. They met once before. So she recognizes San, but that will come up in a little bit. So basically, they end up bringing the Bullywugs deeper into the forest, and once they're like, yeah, they're far enough to where they probably won't be able to make their way back, before they separated, Takara really didn't want to kill them. So they were trying their best to relocate them. So then they were trying to figure out how to disperse the Bullywugs, because they're kind of attached now. So they're like, well, maybe we can scare them away. So Pip makes a illusion of San, and Irotha tells San to yell. But San, now realizing that Irotha's there, just says, hello! And then she's like, no, come on, San, yell, come on. So San ends up, then I describe how the music had stopped. He noticed Irotha, and then he also noticed a slightly smaller version of himself standing next to himself. So he turns and looks at it and gets scared and yells. So I'm like, okay, do an intimidation check to see if this startles the Bullywugs. I gave him an advantage on it because Pip was helping, and he got a 3. So the Bullywugs were not scared at all. They were trying to figure out what to do. during the Conga procession, at one point, Irotha is like, oh, can I, sleight of hand, steal their spears from them so they don't have any weapons? So she's got like a 17 or something and managed to take them all. So she had like 5 spears that she stole from them. So the Bullywugs are unarmored. And the team was taking a little bit to try and figure out what to do. Like I said, everybody's kind of new at this. So I describe a rustling coming from one of the bushes. And so Pip looks over, and I'm like, a giant black bear bolts out. Alright. And now Pip has a ring that allows her to speak to animals, and it's just like always on. So the bear just yells out with a roar, free food, because all these Bullywugs are unarmed, and just snaps one up and chomps on it, and then the rest like scatter. And the bear chases after them. So then Pip is like, do not tell Takara about this. Let's tell her that everything went fine, the Bullywugs are safe. And Stan responds with, tell her what? Because he already forgot what happened. So Irotha joins the party, and while this is happening, Cassius and Takara were back at the camp, and they were trying to fish some barrels that were floating in the little pond off to the side out of the water to see what was in them. They also found a treasure chest that was just locked with a twig, probably on top of the scaffolding because Breath of the Wild. And inside of it was just 2 rusty daggers and a ruby. With the party, I think Cassius mage hands the one of the barrels over, floats it over, and Takara uses shape water to kind of push it. But they get the barrels out, then they work together to pry them open. So they actually take the 2 daggers that they just got and shove in the top of the lid and pop it open. And they manage to get it open, and I describe a hand like holding on to the underside as they pull off the lid, and they actually pull out a Bullywug. So they pull out the Bullywug, and then the player who's playing Cassius is like, can I just like intimidate it to leave? Like, I just point at the wreckage of their village and point at them and then point to the forest. And I'm like, yeah, sure, give me a persuasion check. You know. I think he just said he was trying to persuade it to leave. So he rolled pretty well. So the Bullywug just looks at the destroyed camp and dejectedly just kind of like slumps off into the forest. So then they check the second barrel, same thing, there's a Bullywug in it. This time Takara just like points at the forest and it just dejectedly walks off. Before leaving, it grabs its soggy, overcooked, burnt would-be meal of squirrel from the fire and hobbles off into, well, not hobbles, but walks off into the forest. So the team ends up regrouping, and Pip explains that everything went great, nothing bad happened, Bullywugs are safe. Takara's like, yeah, okay, that's great. Then they're like, who is this new companion? And Pip's like, yeah, I didn't really get to talk to her. So Irotha introduces herself, and then Sam's like, yeah, that's Irotha. We've met before. She helped me out. She saved my life. You see, I was lost at one point, and she came out and helped me cross a river. And that saved his life. So, yeah. He really need to get past that river. So, they loosely have history together. They at least know each other. So Aright ends up accompanying them back to the guild to report on the mission. Gigi's like, great, you cleared it. You each, the reward was 40 gold, so they get the 40 gold. Some of them give some money to Aright, and Pip went out and did some street performing and got a couple pieces of gold. So they had their spoils for that little adventure was their 40 gold, plus Pip got 2 from performing in the street, and the gemstone that they got was worth 25 gold. And to put in perspective, that's quite a bit of money, because in the game, the average person makes about a gold a day. So it was decent. So yeah, they report to Gigi. They tell him that the Bullywugs were removed. She's like, "Oh, that's great. I can let the fishermen know." And hands out the money. I'm probably gonna end the video there. I'm sure it's been like 40 minutes of me talking, so I was hoping to give kind of a relaxing style video, but this is their first adventure. I was hoping kind of to do something you can kind of just put on to like relax before bed, kind of. So I hope that's how this worked out. But if you guys are interested in more of these videos, let me know. Like I said, this is unscripted and I probably won't do much editing. I was thinking about adding some background ambience, so I might do that, but I'm not sure. I'll figure it out. So, anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I don't really need an outro for this one, so I'll see you next time, traveler.